originally, and he developed Jeet Kune Do out of that. So Wing Chun, in some sense, is a soft school of martial arts. However, if one equates that work as weak or without strength, they are dead wrong. Wing Chun is to maintain one's flexibility and softness, all the while keeping in the strength to fight back, much like the flexible nature of bamboo. So you know how that bamboo will come back. And then looking in some Aikido versions, if Irimi is the yang of the movement, then Tenkan must be the yin. Hard and soft bring balance. In order to move fluidly and be flexible in your timing and movement, your body must stay soft to respond to the attack. In the core of that softness lies a crystal hard knowledge and strength of spirit to succeed and restore balance. So this person is equating the idea of hardness with strength of spirit, but not physical. So you all have practiced with me, you know my predilection for being soft, and my comment that why it's martial is because if you can't feel it, you can't fight it. And hence Sistema and Gracie Jiu-Jitsu are two of the most effective and popular arts, and they're the softest too. And when they did the mixed martial arts, starting in, I guess it was the 80s or 90s when it started, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu guys beat everybody. They took on everybody and they beat them all. And they're super soft. So it's a really strong statement because all the karate and kickboxing guys and sumo guys and the judo guys came, and the Gracie guys took them all out. So I think there's a lot of integrity, martial integrity to this kind of power. And I just want to, before we do any exercises, I want to open it up a little bit and see any thoughts you might have about the power of softness, and not only just softness, but to be able to overcome the hardness, the stiffness, that kind of tough strength that tries to stop things. So any thoughts any of you have? Any experiences you might have?
Sensei, I find that humor is a great way for myself to find softness in things, and then like you know, even there, and there's a reminder too of like how to, like sometimes you get an intensity in your face and facial muscles and that kind of thing, and sort of relaxing and smiling and softening helps like tremendously in softening the rest of the body.
100%. Way back when I started Aikido in the 1971, but around 72, I was studying with Duran Sensei. We were in the Unitarian Chapel. Those were the days. And he would do this thing where he would put, you know, he'd done a lot of hand-to-hand in the Marines. So he was kind of like, and then Nato had been a cop. And so they both consider themselves tough. But he had this really cool little thing I thought was cool. Where he'd have Uke put their finger on your throat like that. And imagine it's a knife. And Uke would be actually touching your throat with their finger. And his thing was, when I move, you thrust. Mm. And what he would do is he would smile. And then he would move. And the smile would completely throw off the person who had the finger here, who was just waiting to, you know, to thrust, that represented the knife. And I thought it was so, I mean, especially for Duran Sensei, because that time, you know, he and Nato Sensei were very into, they were into being strong, and they come from strong male background, training. And it was so powerful, and it worked every time. even if I was the uke and I had my finger in the person's throat and I would tell myself, don't buy it, don't buy it, when they would smile, it would, for a fraction of a second, my whole system would be thrown off. And then by the time I thrusted, they would have moved, you move a little so it goes by, is that exercise. So to say that, I mean, it has martial implications as well, not only in life, but it's very disarming if someone thinks they're going to be aggressive to you and you smile. It definitely, yeah.
It reminds me of, I think her name was Amy. She was training at our dojo and she was a basketball player.
Yes,
right?
her name was Amy, yeah.
Yeah, and she was super high level, like collegiate basketball player.
Yes,
and we were talking, and we were doing this in the dojo the other night, and we're talking about fakes, right? And she was, and fakes are incredibly powerful. Like you see it in sports all the time, especially competitive sports where they, the football player is like, he's looking this way, he's going to throw that way, but then he throws that way at the last second. And when I was asking her, what do they teach you about fakes? And she said, you have to extend time. It needs to be more drawn out so that the other person falls for it, right? The fake. And I was like, wow, there's martial implications in that, right? And there's a softness to that too, because you really have to like sort of, we're going this way, but no, we're going that way now.
Absolutely. No, it's very true. And even that one that I like to do where someone's coming with a ski or a strike and you go like this, you're actually, it's a kind of a fake because you're saying your target is actually here, it's not here. Like the person's going to strike here or here. And when you move your finger, their energy follows your finger. So it's kind of a fake because you're redirecting their attention in that same way. Yeah.
The same thing with the strike from Yokumin sensei that you do all the time, with the sort of infinity move at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but in order to do those, there needs to be I'm going to use the word flexibility, which is connected to softness for me. Like when I'm flexible, there's a kind of there's not a hardness. And that flexibility allows more possibilities in the situation than just there's going to be that, or there's just going to be that. It's like flexibility. Oh, there could be a number of ways that we could take this situation rather than the one way to take it. Any other thoughts on the power of softness and how any experiences you might have where it did overcome hardness?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, all right. Well, I was into my first year of Aikido, and I went home for Thanksgiving, and I was in the kitchen talking to my mother, and I was very excited about something. And my father comes behind with a roundhouse to attack me. And I was facing away from him, but I felt him, and I just did a kokyu move, and he fell against the refrigerator. And this was the first time that I had ever defended myself. I was 30 years old from his attacks. And it was like, oh my gosh, this stuff works. Yeah.
Oh. And it must have been pretty relaxed for him not to. I
was totally relaxed. Yeah. I didn't, in a way, like I didn't see it coming. I wasn't like getting ready for it. I was just present and felt that energy coming in, and it worked. And it went, yeah. So that was what was really, like you were talking about, big guys and it working with them. It was like, oh my gosh, this worked with my father.
Yeah.
And I didn't do anything, was kind of the feeling, it was that soft. And yeah, so that was when, okay, I'm going to stay with this. This stuff works.
On lots of levels it works, but it's not easy to do. I mean, you were very fortunate that you were able to, sometimes beginners, we have that beginners thing where no big deal. And then as we progress in the art, it almost gets harder. to do that.
Well, sure, that was not like from then on, it was awesome. But it did give me a taste
Yes.
of the possibility. And yeah.
For sure. Try to think about times where there's been a strong grip. And in the old school, because most of us have done Aikido for a long time, and we grew up in some version of old school. I mean, none of us grew up with Hichizuki, and most of us grew up with some version of that or that thing. Can you think of any situations where you were able to use softness rather than the kind of traditional, toughness to break a grip or to change it?
One of my fondest memories is of Jean Maigret grabbing her, and she just started to say, "You got me there, but you haven't got me here." And she's just doing this whole wiggle dance.
Wiggling. Yeah, wiggling is really, there's something about it that happens if your body can do a little shimmy or a little wiggle, that it takes this kind of, you can't move energy, and it shifts it into some kind of almost primordial. Because, we're at a cellular level, we're sort of wiggling all the time. Like cells are moving or wiggling, or it's like that. It's not like cells are like, and so if we can touch into something really sort of primordial inside of us, and kind of a shimmy or a little wiggle is like that, I think it overcomes, because was part of the thing, that lock. I think that lock cannot sustain itself when it encounters that level of primordial, fundamental, universal wiggle, so to speak.
Well, Sensei, it reminds me of the techniques that we did where it starts loose, like they grab the bottom of your gi sleeve and it's loose, and you take the slack out. So it's like you start soft, and then you move into, it's a soft move in, and then before they know it, you've taken the slack out and you can do a throw. It's a sode.
Yes.
Remember the name of it, but they'll grab here, or they'll grab the edge, and you go in or you go around and you take up the slack. You can even come up this way, where you go under. And that one is kind of fun. That's the only one I can think of where it starts as a grab, but there's some, if you stay loose, you keep that looseness, and it's part of the technique. And that one was always kind of fun.
Yeah.
It was so different than the
Yeah. Than the locking. Yeah, and taking up the slack, you're right. I mean, it's my feeling on Kodagaishi, if you take up the slack, a little bit of movement. But if you do this, and you got all this movement, and uke, they don't go. But if you take up the slack, you do a little bit of movement, uke goes too. So,
and you can do it in that soft way that you talk about. And there's so much power in that when you can do it that way. If you cannot grip down on it, but you can let it spiral out,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sensei, I know attacking Endo Sensei, he has such open softness, soft shoulders, incredibly flexible, where he'll let you just take your whole arm behind his whole back, right? And it feels like you're grabbing an empty, when you grab him, it feels like you're grabbing an empty coat sleeve.
Yeah.
Right. It's so loose, but then there's so much power that can be generated in those moments.
Absolutely. Terry Dobson's moldy rope, and he used to bring a whip too, just to show this movement. He'd bring all these things onto the mat. It's driving me crazy, but anyhow, he had this rope, and it was a big long rope, and he'd wiggle it like this, and then you'd see the spiral go all the way to the end of the rope. Or he'd have a whip, and he'd do this, and then you'd see the tip go out. And so he would say, with your arms, it's the same. It's like you can send that vibration all the way out through your uke. like instead of just and here, and he used to say, you know, the movement comes from here and it goes out. So this moves and it goes out. So let's because Ula brought this up, let's play a little bit with contrasting two ways. Imagine you're being held, Ryotidori and Ushiro behind you. And if you can remember what old school was, most of us can, I was taught to like turn my hips and slide my hand, then turn my hips and slide my hand, and then bring my arms up and do a kokyu, and then raise this way. And that would break my partner's grip, and then I could take their grip and do a sankyo or a kokyu throw. So let's do a couple of those, see if you can bring back your memory of what you did and what that was like, and just feel how you used your body and your muscles to do that. So, and just do both sides, maybe do 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of them. So imagine you're being held, you're being grabbed, they kind of grab you and pull you behind your shiro, as you remember. And then I was taught, and you can do it too, just on your own. My hip, and then the other hip, and then just the center, and then that goes there. And then I would grab a sankyo and go around. So play with it on your own for a moment and see if you can remember what it was like. That first grab, what happens to your body when you're grabbed strongly like that, kind of pulled stiff and pulled back. And then how you remember originally working with it. Do a couple more, just to get that memory of being grabbed and your body stiffening. Okay. So let's just stop there because we all kind of hopefully got back into that memory. And for me, just to get that feeling of what it was like when I was grabbed and pulled back like that, what happened to my body. Now let's shift it and see if you're being grabbed and you're being pulled back. And here's what I want you to play with. Move back, even if you have to step back, and push your hips back forward into your partner. So your hands are being held like this, and you actually go back so that your hips are there. And then instead of trying to bring, because they've still got your arms, they're still pulling them back. Instead of trying to bring it in front of you, wiggle a little bit. And as you wiggle, your hands will come together a little bit. So as you wiggle, you're going to drop down, wiggle a little bit, hands come together a little bit. And then I'm taking a sankyo, moving it around. So play with that idea of being grabbed, and then instead of being stiff, you soften, step back or move back. Your arms are still being held, but you start to wiggle a little bit, and you drop down a little bit. And then that automatically lets your hands come in front of you a little bit, and then you're able to take that, and maybe it's a sankyo. So play with that different feeling to respond to being held and pulled back in an ushiro, and stepping back, putting your hips back a little bit and wiggling a little bit and dropping down. And bringing your hands, they automatically sort of come in front. So do that for a couple minutes on your own and notice what that's like. Start with that feeling of being grabbed and held and pulled back, that stiffness. And then see if you can just soften. Wiggle a little bit, move back, drop down. hands naturally for me come in front. And there's Samkhya. Try one more and then we'll check in. Okay, we lost Michelle. So I'm curious to see if that felt different to, instead of trying to undo it, to just, first of all, moving back into the pull, was that different? And then was the wiggling part different too?
Yeah, it's just, well, it's like night and day, the two techniques, they really, really are. And I could still conjure up a little bit of how it felt that day when I first experienced it, and how, you know, you just leave your arms there and let the shoulders relax, and then your whole body sinks at the same time, and then you move one hip behind one hand and then the other, and the arms seem to almost come up effortlessly, which was amazing, because you know, when you're trying to do that blowfish thing, they're very heavy. That's been my experience. They're super heavy in here, and it's just a monumental lift from the thighs up. But with this technique, it was just almost effortless. And I don't know why, because you're still lifting, but it seems like the process of softening sort of disarmed the uke a little bit too, and they softened, like you've talked about before. And
Yes.
that's just amazing, you know, after all those years.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, whatever it takes to come to it. I mean, who knows what we've gained with all the years of struggle. I spent 20 some years being strong and tough and struggling, and 5 years under Aikido Sensei trying to be super strong, until my body started to come apart, and I was like, wait a minute, this is not good. And then all of a sudden my injury, ironically, is what changed, made with the market change. It's like blowing a knee out, where I couldn't stand, put my weight down anymore. I only had one leg. And of course, when you stand on one leg, everybody puts energy up as well as down, because you can't, nobody stands on one leg and goes like this. Everybody, when you go to stand on one leg, they do that. So I think that softness and that lightness, and also I think there's something about going down that there's something natural about the down, the up, rather than just this trying to force it up. Because we've sort of dropped down, there's a tendency for the up to be part of the flow. It's more natural. Any thoughts on, for Greg or Kat, on imagining that Ushiro and the two ways, old school, new school, or traditional and crazy outside?
Yes, Sensei, the wiggling one, there was sort of a sense though, and you said these words earlier, and I don't remember what they were, but it's a little bit more, it's kind of like that feeling when you're meditating and you're sitting upright and there's a strong like flow of energy through the system. I find that's true in even sort of doing the wiggling, even those sort of things, there's a strong sense of energy flowing through the system.
Yeah.
And is where it doesn't, I don't have that same sense in doing the more strong armed version. It feels like I've already tapped out. Whereas the wiggling, it's like constantly pulsing or something through it.
Yeah, and when you think about how deep it is in our bodies, there's a wonderful process called continuum developed by Emily Conrad Daoud. And she was able to tap the pre-nervous system and had people who were paralyzed, taught them to connect to the ungulate, which is this place when we were fish. Like we still have that in our biology. When we were, all those things that we had, we came out of the sea and we got on land and then we developed and so on. Well, that's one theory. But the theory is that we still have this sort of almost fish, water-like amoeba thing going on. And that she would teach people to have this, what she called the ungulate. So she would start with your finger and she would say, okay, first move your flesh, then move your bones, then move inside the bones, then move the marrow, then move the pre-marrow. And she would get people to move from this incredibly inside place. And then she would do it in different parts of the body. And she got them, they were quadriplegic, but they could undulate across the floor because they were tapping pre-nervous system. Yeah, it's a really cool thing. Susan Harper kind of took it and developed it into some ways, working more with emotions and psychology, but Emily was really just working with the physical body. It's called continuum. And I thought when she described it, that she was tapping something pre-nervous system that's called the ungulate, which is the part of us that's doing this. That's really, really deep in our physiology. And so I think it's really cool if we can actually kind of connect to that thing. It's like maybe some of us have enjoyed being in the sea and seeing the seaweed, if we've ever snorkeled, and feeling that thing with the snorkeling and how it takes you. Well, so the theory is that we have that inside of us. And, it's like this quote, the softest stuff in the world penetrates quickly the hardest. Insubstantial, it enters where no room is. So it's that sense that it can sort of take us. And if we can bring a little bit of that into our waza, whether it's an Ikkyo or Shihonage, just that feeling, like you said, Endo Sensei being like, I had like warm space, you said an empty sleeve. Satomi Sensei was like a snake to me, like trying to hold a snake. Like everything was just so kind of soft and fluid, and you couldn't, if you went to grab it, it was just, it would just move. And I think we all have that inside of us in our physiology and our biology. And it's kind of a question of playing with it, imagining it, using it as a way to match the hardness that comes from an attack. Like, how do we keep that? But it's also, it's a nice thing for our bodies to feel that flowing, that wave thing. And we can't do that. We can't be flowing and be hard. We have to have some degree of softness. And then ironically, when we're uke, we need to be a little more hard, because we have to give our partners something to play with. So if we're uke and we're too soft, then they don't have something to work with. So we have to be able to switch from that kind of like, I'm going to attack you or I'm going to grab you, so they can practice doing this. And then when we're attacked, we need to be able to have that kind of flowy, relaxed, more wiggly thing. So we really need the capacity to do both and the wisdom to know when to do which, so to speak.
Sensei, that's interesting when you have to switch with uke. And I also see, like, because you are going into sort of more hard mode, but there's like a moment in time where you also switch to like a softness in your ukemi. And there was a moment in my sort of trajectory of learning to become a better uke, was that what is sensei doing in that moment in time, right? And I'm not no longer concerned about my well-being, right? And you see it with beginners or people that are falling, they'll sort of have like a little spaz attack, right? But then as you progress and you get better and better at ukemi, you can actually feel what's going on in the chaos of the moment. And sort of like notice little things of like, I want to work on that, or that felt really cool, or this, where you're not like concerned about you know, landing on the mat and landing on your head.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And the other thing that struck me was taking ukemi for those shihan is that I would come in hard, but as soon as I would get near them, I would go soft. Like their energy would shift me. Like I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna give you my best. And that pretty soon I'd be like, what just happened? My body would soften because their presence had so much of, whether it was the warm air or the liquid lead or the whatever texture that each shihan had. As I would, sometimes I'd get like that far away from them and it would change. Sometimes I would touch them and then I couldn't be hard anymore. So and then I could do what you're talking about, is I could be with them and present to what's going on, because it wasn't like I was hard and they were soft. They drew me into their softness, which was pretty impressive. I mean, that was one of the things that I thought Aikido is tremendous power, because it can sort of shift aggression, which is what it did for me with the shihan. It's like I'd come in aggressive and then I couldn't be aggressive. And I was like, oh, there's something amazing going on there. But to do that, when we're not nage, we really have to work on developing a certain quality that we'd like to have. Whether it's warm air or flowing softness or liquid lead or crystal brightness, whatever it is that we want to sort of manifest, we need to start with one, and then I think try to branch out to others too. You know, they talk about fiery stuff, watery stuff, but I've mostly felt them like either warm space or like really flowy, almost snaky movement that I just wanted to go with. So we need to sort of pay attention to what do we want to develop as nage in terms of a quality that will help shift the situation when uke attacks us. I think we should have some thought about that, or explore it. Have exploration about what qualities feel natural to us. What's our good starter quality that we'd like to develop.
Sensei, I was wondering, since I did so much weapons during the pandemic, and what I really like about your set of Boken techniques, your series, is how much there's a give and take there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot. And then there's that contact, the stickiness that's and the whole the drawing them in with your key, and then all of a sudden they're coming back, and so you're drawing them back, and it all happens so quickly and beautifully. What a contrast that is to my earlier training, where it was just whack, 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 whack. And it's there in your, and I was just wondering, you agree it's even built into your Boken techniques and your Jo too?
Yes, well, we can thank Satomi Sensei for that, because those are his series, and he developed those. And his thing was, you know, he developed them for the reasons you're talking about, and also because he loved the sword. And so it was like, you don't want to whack a sword, even an enemy's sword, because you wouldn't want to break the sword. Like that would just be rude, because the sword means so much to the Japanese, spirit. So you don't want to go and then break a sword. You want to do something to change the sword. If they come, you want to bring them in and back and forth. So yeah, no, you can thank him for that. I mean, I loved the series when I first saw it. I was like, oh yes, because I grew up with whack, whack, whack as well. And so it was very clear. He said, it's a stick and you're hitting sticks together. Like he never tried to pretend that you were doing sword work. He was a bokan is a wooden stick and you're hitting another wooden stick. My understanding is he was really clear about that. But Satomi said, I imagine it's a sword. An actual live sword. And you don't want to break the other person's sword, or your own for that matter. So that's kind of a little bit of the different views of what it is. Like I was playing with a Subarito. This was way back when I was first studying with Satomi Sensei. It's great, big, huge baseball bat, bokens. You just for strength and power. And Satomi Sensei comes, he goes, don't do that. He goes, don't do that. There's no refinement in that. He goes, just stop using that. I was like, because I thought, oh, I'm going to make myself strong. He goes, no, that's not the point. You have to be refined. It has to be beautiful. It has to be light and quick and powerful. And I was like, okay. So it was a very different approach than the make yourself stronger, approach.
Did you hit the tire?
Yeah, a bunch.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not easy to hit it so it doesn't bounce.
Right. Yes.
It's
Yes.
not an easy thing to do. Yeah, hit the tire a lot. But those were the good old days, but we were young and we could do it. It didn't break our bodies. Now we're in a different
mode.
Well, I think we should get our bokens and do a little that and see if any of this carries over into our boken work. So if you have a chance to get your boken. Okay, let's take our bokens out. And let's start with our ritual. Let's stir the cosmic soup and invite wisdom traditions from all times, all places, and all eons to come and support our intentions for good in the world, lightning rod to heaven and bringing it into us. Oh. And then let's just do a little bit. This is kind of in line with what we're doing. It's that sense of almost that watery cut where rather than power, we're using flow. And the leg pulls the tip back. And the hands are fairly relaxed and loose. And think of it as just a nice figure eight. And your breath is flowing nicely. And it's almost like the boken has a watery quality to it. And it's moving on its own. When it drops down, it just pops up easily. Nice. A few more. And stop, and then just stand in that for a minute and see if you can just sense that sense of figure eight and that flow going on. Oh. And then let's invite a little energy from the heavens and from the earth. Open our backs. Invite Aiki spirit teachers or mentors to flow through us. And let's say our intention. Ready, and I wish to bring more joyful perseverance into the world. And send it out. I wish to bring more joyful perseverance into the world and send it out. I wish to bring more joyful perseverance into the world. Cut again, and a ki. Hi! All right, let's bring it up another 5%, 7%, a little more ki from the sky, from the earth, from behind us, flowing through us, empowering our intention. Ready, and I wish to invite more joyful perseverance in the world. Send it out. I wish to invite more joyful perseverance in the world. Send it out. I wish to invite more joyful perseverance in the world. Cut. Cut again. And a big ki. Hi! Letting that surround us. Let's do one more. Again, inviting from the earth, from the sky, inviting our inspiration to flow through us into the world. Ready, and. I wish to invite more joyful perseverance in the world. Send it out. I wish to allow more joyful perseverance in the world. Send it out. I wish to invite more joyful perseverance in the world. Cut. Cut again. And the last one with the ki. Hey! Standing in it. Letting all of that ki flow through you and around you, and your intention going out into the world. Nice, let's put our both hands to the side. Standing bow. And putting our both hands away. And let's end with a little bit of heaven and earth breathing. Taking a moment, dip down, bringing it up from the earth, reaching for the stars, sending it out into the world. Let's do two more. And now let's just stand in it for a moment. Sensing the connection to heaven and earth, sending some good energy out into the world. Good ki. And a moment of appreciation for our friends and training partners, for our community, and our global Aikido community, for our teachers and mentors, for O Sensei's vision, and for our own hearts. And let's bow out. Domo arigatou gozaimashita. So thank you all for joining. Thank you for your thoughts. Ula, thank you for your note. I thought it was good to talk about softness and wiggling and all of that. And let's see, I come on the 5th, so I'll be there the 6th and 7th, Sunday the 6th, Monday the 7th. At TAM to teach class.
Okay.
Just so you know, and yeah, so maybe I'll see you then.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sensei.
Thank you, and Greg, thank you as always for hosting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sensei. If you could stay on a second, Sensei, I wanted to ask you something.
Okay, you want to end the recording?
Yeah.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night, Ula. Good night.